Good evening, friends. Today I'm going to begin with a new chapter, that is fundamental rights. Before I begin with my lectures on fundamental rights, you should know that this is one of the most important chapters in your syllabus of polity and governance. In fact, it is difficult to see any question paper without a good number of questions directly or indirectly related to fundamental rights. And if you examine the developments taking place around you in the politico-administrative sphere, here also you will find every second day a petition is being filed in the Supreme Court or High Court, or for the restoration of fundamental rights, or any law enacted by the government is being challenged on the ground of violation of fundamental rights. So a lot of developments keep taking place around fundamental rights. It's so much important. Not only it is important from examination point of view, but in general, as a citizen of this country, as an educated citizen of this country, you should be aware of your fundamental rights so that you could protect yourself against arbitrary actions of the state agencies. And secondly, you could also help others, because there are many persons who are not aware of their fundamental rights. They are not so much educated. So if you know the fundamental rights, the scope of fundamental rights, not only you can insulate yourself against the arbitrary actions of the state agencies, but you can help others in doing so. So this is very important, and this will be a long journey. I will begin my lectures on rights, and then human rights, and I'll come to fundamental rights. And in this chapter, the part 3 of Indian Constitution deals with fundamental rights. And in this chapter, you find that state has been defined under Article 12, and then the Article 13 deals with what constitutes a law. A law is also defined, and after that, you have different groups dealing with fundamental rights related to a particular subject matter. So you have a first group dealing with equality. So you have fundamental rights related to equality, right to equality, then right to freedoms, then you have right that you enjoy against exploitation, then right to religious freedom, then you have education and cultural rights, and then right to seek constitutional remedies in case your fundamental rights are violated. Then remedies are also provided within that chapter on fundamental rights. Under Article 32, remedies have been provided. It means you can move Supreme Court and High Court for the restoration of your fundamental rights if your fundamental rights have been violated, or for that matter it is threatened to be violated. Getting a point? So this will be a long journey. Listen to me very patiently. So I will move step by step. I will begin with an assumption that you know nothing. So if you know everything, still you need to hold patience. Step by step, gradually, I will elevate, the level of discussion. Before I begin my discussion on fundamental rights, first of all, you should know what are rights, or what do you mean by right when you say right. It can be social right, it can be cultural right, it can be political right. What is the meaning of right? See, right means any kind of claim. Right means some kind of claim, some kind of entitlement, some kind of claim or some kind of entitlement enjoyed by a person by virtue of some kind of sustainable disposition. A little technical, difficult. Let us make it simple. Either because of law, or because of traditions or the value system governing a society, or because of principles guiding the administration, or because of some kind of principles governing the economy, or some kind of principles governing the culture of that society. If you are conferred with certain legitimate claims over something, then you can say that you enjoy right over something. So it means by virtue of law or by virtue of any principle governing society, culture, economy, polity, or by virtue of ethical standards of the society, by virtue of any normative standards which have evolved in a society, the claim that you enjoy over something or the entitlement that you enjoy, that constitute the scope of right. It can be social rights, it can be cultural rights, it can be political rights. So it means the source may differ. There can be more than one sources, but ultimately when you enjoy some kind of rights, it means you enjoy some kind of claim, some kind of entitlement over something. Point is clear? You can understand it in a better way, if I bring duty as well in our discussion. When you exercise your right, it means you exercise your claim over something. It has an outward throw. When it comes to acknowledge one's duty, when you acknowledge your duty, it means you acknowledge the claims of others on your resources, on your life. So when I say when a person is right conscious, it means the person is very much conscious of the entitlements and the claims that he enjoy. Person is very much conscious of his claims over something. That person is right conscious. And duty conscious person is the one who thinks less about the claims that he may enjoy over things, rather he acknowledges the claims of others. This is the relationship, or this is the line of distinction between rights on the one hand and duties on the other. रामायण का एग्जाम्पल ले लो. रामायण में आप देखोगे एक से एक पात्र हैं. देखो जरा कैसे कैसे चरित्र हैं उसमें. आप प्रभु श्री राम की बात करें या लक्ष्मण जी की बात करें या सीता माता की बात करें, वो सब लोग ड्यूटी कॉन्शियस हैं. वो राइट कॉन्शियस लोग नहीं हैं. वो राइट से कहीं अधिक ड्यूटी को महत्व देते हैं. मतलब प्रभु श्री राम जो हैं वो इस बात पर बहुत ज़्यादा ध्यान केंद्रित नहीं करते हैं कि उनका क्लेम किन चीज़ों पे है. वो इस बात पे ध्यान ज़्यादा देते हैं कि उनके पिता महाराजा दशरथ, उनका हक बनता है, उनका क्लेम इनकी लाइफ पे है क्योंकि वो मेरे पिता हैं. इसलिए उनका जो भी आदेश होगा वो आदेश, उस आदेश की अनुपालना मुझे करनी है, ये मेरा कर्तव्य है. क्योंकि राम एक श्रेष्ठ पुत्र हैं, मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम हैं. और देखिए मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम हैं तो उनका चरित्र और स्वभाव कैसा है, ठीक है, उनका नेचर कैसा है. आप देखिए वो राइट्स के बारे में सोचते हैं कम और वो ड्यूटीज़ के बारे में सोचते हैं. ड्यूटीज़ के बारे में सोचने का मतलब ये कि दूसरों का क्या क्लेम है उनके लाइफ पे, उस पर वो फोकस ज़्यादा करते हैं. एक समाज इसी तरह से चलता है. सो व्हेन वी थिंक ऑफ अ सोसाइटी, बेसिकली अ सिविलाइज्ड सोसाइटी इज नथिंग but an evolved setup of rights and obligations, rights and duties which govern the behavior of that collectivity of people. Are you getting a point? So I was discussing rights. When we think of right, we think of some kind of claim, some kind of entitlement by virtue of any disposition, legitimate disposition. It may be law. Because of law, you enjoy claim over something. Because of social values or norms, you enjoy claim over something. Getting a point? Because of some kind of the principles governing the culture, you enjoy claim over something. Or there can be other sources as well. Whatever be the sources, it must be legitimate. There is acceptability for the same, and then you enjoy claim over something. Point is clear? हमारी एक सामाजिक व्यवस्था है. उस सामाजिक व्यवस्था के अंदर हम सब के अलग अलग स्तर पर अधिकार है. एक पिता का अधिकार अपने पुत्र पर है. एक पुत्र का भी एक अधिकार है, चूंकि वो एक पुत्र होने के नाते अपने पिता की संपत्ति पर उसका अधिकार होगा. एक पत्नी का अधिकार होगा अपने पति पर, एक पति का अधिकार होगा अपनी पत्नी. बट इट इज बेस्ड ऑन सम काइंड ऑफ लेजिटिमेट डिस्पोजिशन. सीधे एक पुरुष किसी दूसरी स्त्री पर दावा नहीं कर सकता, उसका कोई अधिकार नहीं है. यदि उन दोनों का विवाह समाज के समक्ष, उन दोनों का विवाह उस रीति रिवाज के तहत हुआ है जिसको मान्यता प्राप्त है, तब उस स्त्री का एक अधिकार होगा किस पर, अपने पति पर, और उस पति का अधिकार उस स्त्री पर, उसकी पत्नी पर होगा। इसका मतलब ये है कि पिता हो या पुत्र हो या पति हो या पत्नी हो, एक एम्प्लॉयर है तो उसका कुछ अधिकार है, एम्प्लॉय पे एम्प्लॉय है तो उसका भी अधिकार है कि उसने श्रम किया है, उसने कार्य किया है महीने भर, तो तनख्वाह लेना उसका अधिकार है। और एक एम्प्लॉयर है, नियोक्ता है, वो चूंकि आपको आपकी तनख्वाह दे रहा है इसलिए वो आपको आदेश दे सकता है कार्य करने के लिए, ये उसका अधिकार है कि आपसे वो काम करवाए। मेरी बात समझे? ठीक है। सो दिस इज अबाउट राइट्स। अब इसमें अब एक एक वर्ड इसमें हम लोग अटैच कर देंगे तो सारी चीज़ें क्लियर हो जाएंगी। So when we think of rights, we think of some kind of claim or entitlement by virtue of a legitimate disposition. That disposition may be the disposition of law, it may be the disposition of some social cultural values or some other legitimate sources. Clear? Then now come to human rights. Human rights ekdam simple. It means those claims or those entitlements which all of us do enjoy on this planet by virtue of being human beings. The scope of human rights is very broad. Getting a point? Those claims or those entitlements which are available to every individual on this planet. Why? Because he is a human being. So it means the basic minimum entitlement, that basic entitlements and claims which are available to a person. Why? Because he is a human being. That is known as human rights. Human right. It has a very broad scope. Getting a point? By virtue of being a human being, you enjoy certain entitlements, certain claims over something which has nothing to do with your religion, with your culture. It has nothing to do with the country or society you come from. So beyond the confines of nationality, religion, culture, caste, class, whatever thing that you consider, beyond that you enjoy, beyond such narrow confines of caste, class, religion, region, country, nationality, etc. You enjoy certain claims simply because you are a human being. This is known as human rights. So human rights, it is available to every single person on this planet. So scope of human rights is very broad, very broad. It may be related to, human rights may bring within its purview the right against exploitation, right to equality, right to be treated with fairness, right to be treated with due respect. Getting a point? Right to live with dignity. These are the very basic rights. Here you cannot say that these people belong to this country or that country, the people belong to this religion or that religion. No, these are the basic rights, basic entitlements, basic claims of every person on this planet, which has nothing to do with his nationality, religion and other extraneous factors. These are known as human rights. Point is clear? Yeah, see, acknowledgement of human rights and proper enforcement of human rights through one or other legal or administrative regime is extremely essential to improve the quality of life of people on this planet. So that's why in the last few decades, particularly after the Second World War, there has been a lot of concern at the global level for human rights. And the campaign for human rights has got a lot of strength because of evolution of many international multilateral regime related to human rights. So International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1977, then International Covenant on Social, Educational and Cultural Rights. Similarly, there has been several conventions signed by many countries in the world, conventions against all forms of different forms of racial discrimination, the Convention for the Protection of Child, conventions against exploitation or against corruption. There are so many things. So at the global level, there has been several initiatives like this, like multilateral, the international regime, to which many countries, most of the countries have participated, which has led to, initiation of a powerful campaign to enforce human rights all over the world. Okay, but does not mean that everything is hunky-dory related to human rights. There are many countries wherein human rights are not being respected. So these are the challenges. There is a gap between how things should be and how things actually are. But at the same time, there is no denying the fact that there has been consistently increasing concern over human rights. What is clear? Now, what are fundamental rights? See, scope of human rights is very broad. Clear? As I discussed, it may be related to right to equality, rights against exploitation, or many more things. Certain rights or rights which are available to us. Why? Because we are human beings. But in the wider scope of, very broad scope of human rights, there can be certain human rights. I am talking about human rights within the broader bounds of human rights as it has evolved over a long period of time. There can be certain human rights which are so basic, so fundamental, that if these rights are not conferred on people, their moral, physical, intellectual or spiritual growth will be impossible. Human rights are important, but within the bounds of human rights, there can be certain human rights which are so much important that in the absence of them, we cannot conceive of or we cannot think of moral, physical, intellectual or spiritual growth of an individual. Life will not be livable. It would be difficult to draw the line of distinction between a human life and an animalistic life. These rights are so much important. These rights are known as fundamental rights. So fundamental rights are very basic and very fundamental rights. I am, repeating the same word. Fundamental rights are very fundamental. Actually, try to understand the spirit. Fundamental rights refer to those human rights which are so basic that in the absence of them we cannot think of the growth and development of society, of an individual or group or community. These are known as fundamental rights. In our constitution, part 3 deals with fundamental rights. These fundamental rights, part 3, is inspired by United Nations Declaration of Human Rights 1948. Getting a point? So following the independence of the country, when the constitution was being framed, the founding fathers of the constitution incorporated the spirit of United Nations Declaration of Human Rights within the chapter on fundamental rights, part 3, one of the most beautiful chapters in our constitution. It is imbued with those principles and values which aim at establishing a genuinely welfare state free from exploitation, not only free from exploitation, but a state with a very conducive environment for every individual and group to give expression to their creativity, to give expression to their freedom, so that they could live a good life and they could also contribute to the quality life of the nation or the quality life of the people defining the nation. One is clear? Fundamental rights are different from human rights. In what respect? Fundamental rights are the more concrete and more basic of human rights, you can say. So all fundamental rights are human rights, but all human rights are not fundamental rights. Point is clear? Then a relevant question, next question which is relevant is what is the difference between fundamental rights and legal rights? See, fundamental rights enjoy constitutional sanctity. Fundamental rights enjoy constitutional sanctity. They have been conferred on us directly by the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Whereas legal rights are those which are conferred on us by the laws enacted by the union and state legislature. There is a difference between laws enacted by union and state legislature. Getting a point? Such laws which confer on us, the rights they are known as legal rights, and fundamental rights have been given to us directly by the Constitution, supreme law of the land. The word constitution is not used in the ordinary sense of law as defined under Article 13. Getting a point? Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It means all laws enacted by union and state legislature must conform to the requirements of the Constitution, and it is not vice versa. Once clear? Fundamental rights, unlike legal rights, emanate directly from the Constitution. Fundamental rights got enforced the very day Constitution was enforced, that is 26 January 1950. Whereas legal rights have been given to us, have been conferred on us through various laws enacted by the union and state legislatures. Second difference, in case of violation of fundamental rights, you can move Supreme Court directly. Yes, you can move Supreme Court directly for the restoration of your fundamental rights. But in case of violation of legal rights, you cannot move Supreme Court directly. In case of violation of legal rights, you'll have to go to the High Court, or in many cases, you'll have to go through the process of appeal, even from the lower courts. So it means high courts can issue writs for the restoration of fundamental rights as well as legal rights. But Supreme Court can issue writs for the restoration of fundamental rights only. So fundamental rights stand on a different footing. It is taken very, very seriously. So fundamental rights have been made easily enforceable compared to legal rights. Clear? To bring any changes in fundamental rights, if you want to change fundamental rights, you will have to amend the Constitution, which is a complicated process. It requires Constitutional Amendment Bill, which is required to be passed by Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha by 2/3 majority, sitting separately. 2/3 majority, whereas legal rights are conferred on you by the ordinary law enacted by the legislature. So therefore, by amending such law, even by simple majority, we can bring changes in legal rights. So therefore, fundamental rights and legal rights, they stand on two different footings. Point is clear? Then again, at the macro level, broader level, what is the significance of such rights? These legal rights and fundamental rights, in a way, insulate you. I am talking about individuals and community as well. They insulate us against the possibilities of state tyranny. They insulate us against the possibility of, they insulate us against the possibilities of any kind of arbitrary, or authoritarian actions of the government or the government agencies. Our fundamental rights put a check, or can say it puts shackles on the body of the state. That states can exercise authority, state agencies can exercise authority only to the extent wherein fundamental rights are not breached or fundamental rights are not taken away. Because the moment any law or any administrative action touches the fundamental rights, then it becomes a genuine case to be taken cognizance of by the Supreme Court and High Court. They can intervene and they can set aside the administrative action or the legislative action of the state. Are you getting a point? So fundamental rights, in a way, provides you with that protective shield, which is required to be respected by the state agencies. In case they try to break it or they try to touch it, they try to abuse it, you can move Supreme Court or High Court as the case may be. And such actions can be set aside. Take the example of Arnab Goswami. Just few days ago, last night, Arnab Goswami, just a day before in the morning, Arnab Goswami was arrested by Mumbai police. Arnab Goswami was arrested by Mumbai police. It's grossly, you can say, illegal action. He was arrested on the basis of the charges which were brought against him, a couple of years ago, more than 1 year ago, and this file was closed. And once again the file has been opened by the police without any permission from the magistrate, as it has been made out in the court of law. And then police, instead of issuing summon, or instead of calling him to the police station for inquiry, investigation, even if they are willing to investigate it further, so straightway the police brought us into house, and then he was apprehended. Amid all this chaos and hullabaloo, he was arrested. So there has been, if police authorities have arrested Arnab Goswami in the violation of his fundamental rights under Article 14. Article 14 of the Constitution deals with equality before law and equal protection of all laws. You cannot apply law selectively. In the case of Arnab Goswami, he enjoys certain protection. So they have manipulated with the rules and procedures. A case which was closed, a closure report was submitted. Somebody had made allegations against Arnab Goswami. It was regarding the payment of some dues. So allegations were made. It was then FIR was registered, and then it was investigated, and police found no convincing evidences against the accused, and accordingly the case was the closed. And after a year or so, once again you open the case on the basis of the statement given by the daughter of the person who committed suicide in this case. On the basis of her statement, once again you open the case without any approval from the magistrate. So and you apprehend the person, you arrest Mr. Arnab Goswami. So editor-in-chief of a leading news channel, if he can be treated like this, then what are the chances of con man against this kind of police? Getting a point? So his fundamental rights under Article 14 was violated. Then again his fundamental rights under Article 19 was also violated. Freedom of speech and expression. Then freedom to follow any profession of his choice. He is not being allowed to follow his profession. And then his fundamental rights under Article 21(2) was violated, right to life and personal liberty. Are you getting a point? This is the significance of fundamental rights. Now this police action cannot be sustained in the court of law. Tomorrow, a petition has been filed. A hearing would begin tomorrow in the Bombay High Court. Police authority, Mumbai Police has little chances of sustaining its arbitrary action there. They will be beaten up black and blue. This kind of action cannot be sustained. It is because of fundamental rights that you are protected. Police authorities, they need to think twice and thrice, before taking such actions against you. I don't know how they have acted in this case. So much uncouth, uncivilized and unprofessional way. Mumbai police action is legally not sustainable, morally not sustainable. Further, it is in contravention of administrative ethics, basic principles, morality. It is against that. There is a person who is injured and you drag that person. He is an editor-in-chief, and even if he is not an editor-in-chief, he is a con man. Was it really necessary to drag the person to police station like this? Was there any amount of risk that this person will run away from the country? He is a mafia or criminal, he is the leader of Jaise Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Toiba. The person appears in front of the entire nation of the world every day during news hours. So what was the necessity? What compelled the police? Did the situation really warrant this kind of extreme action? And these kind of things keep taking place. Shaheen Bagh's case, 20 kilometers from Supreme Court or the Parliament, 25 kilometers, something like this. A territory is hijacked by a group of protesters. So freedom of speech and expression, in the course of pursuing their fundamental rights related to freedom of speech and expression, they ended up encroaching upon the fundamental rights of others. And what was that fundamental right? Under Article 19, right to move freely throughout the territory of India. You have restricted the right to movement of people in furtherance of your fundamental rights. So what I mean to say, every second day, third day, you will come across one other instances of violation of fundamental rights or friction over fundamental rights. Point is clear? So I have discussed rights, then I discussed rights and duties, and then I discussed human rights, the broader scope of human rights, and why this scope. And again, see, the domain of human right is never static. It keeps evolving. As the society evolves, it also evolves. It undergoes some kind of expansion or contraction, as the case may be. A society may evolve on the either side of the fence. What is clear? Then I discussed human rights. Then I discussed a part of human right which is so basic, that without which we cannot think of growth and development of an individual. That is known as fundamental right. Then I discussed difference between fundamental rights and human rights. What is clear? Put together, these rights provide you a protective shield against the possibilities of state tyranny. It is difficult to think of a stable and civilized society, without